Hello everyone and welcome back to our survival series. In the last episode we went through the process of actually placing these objects into our scene, but now we're going to make a more advanced object, one that we can interact with and do something else with it. In this case we're going to make a workbench, so give us more access to more advanced building materials. So let's jump in and have a look. Okay, so last time we got our pieces actually being built and added to the scene. But let's go ahead and try and make something a bit more complex. Let's try and make another crafting bench, which allows us to have access to more items on our build menu. So for this, we actually first of all need to make the actual bench itself. So I'm going to go to my building system and go to building pieces and make a child of my building piece base. And make a child of that. And we call this one workbench. And if I go to the workbench, we can now set up what we want this to look like. So we're just going to give this thing a mesh first of all. So I brought in a pack here I can use. We're going to bring in, and we'll use this box table type thing and assign that to that mesh there. Okay, and we'll compile that and save that. And then once we're done with that, we can go ahead into our building system folder and go to the building pieces data. So here we need to make another data slot for our workbench. So I'm just going to duplicate this one and call it workbench. Open this up and we'll just call this one workbench. And we'll rename description, create a workbench to craft more advanced pieces. And the class it's going to use is the workbench class that we just made. Like that. Thumbnail, I don't really have anything really to use, so we'll just leave it for now as the pyre. Fine. And we're good to go. Well, good to go. We need to go to recipe. Whoops, my bad. So in here, workbench here, 3 wood. Actually, we'll leave it as 3 wood to create the workbench. So we're then going to go to our UI. In the build system menu UI folder, we've got the build menu. And we go to building slot 1, because the first one is the fire pit. Second one is going to be the workbench. File, and then go back to the game. And we should be able to see that now. I won't yet until we get the wood. Just get the wood first. And go to build, and there's my workbench. Click on that. And I can now place this there. Okay, so that is, I say, the method that you go through just to add more items to your scene. But obviously we want this thing to be actually interactable and usable, as does the fire pit really, because we have to be able to ignite the fire pit and extinguish it as well. So let's go and first of all set up the collision of this, because at the moment you can see I just walked right through it. So let's go and edit that. So to fix that collision issue, we're going to go into our building piece base, and as you can see on begin play, we had set it to be a no collision at the very start. So that's when you're placing it, you place it wherever you want. But obviously once you have placed it, we want to change that. So when we get back to over here, we want to go to there on the end of this completed for place object and change that to be collision enabled to query and physics. You need both because we're going to have to interact with it in a minute. So we want to make sure that's on there. And we'll just see that working now. Workbench. There you go. And there you go. Collision. So, as I said, we need to make this interactable. So, if we already take a look at, we've already got an interface system already set up prior to this via the inventory system series. So if you go to class settings on the right hand side, you should be able to go to your interfaces and add a interact interface to this, and you'll see you got the use item, interact with, and look at. So coming up over here. So when we look at, we're going to put in a message of use workbench, and on the interact with, we're going to make it display a workbench. And that's going to be its own UI type menu. Now, fortunately, the UI is basically the same as our building UI. It's just different sets of data going into it. So I'm going to go into my build menu, right click on this one, and I'm going to duplicate that. Build menu underscore workbench. And in here, we can say, okay, well, this one will be fire pit. We won't have anything on the second one. So we'll make it so you need the workbench to create the fire pit. So let's go back to the original build menu. And we'll take fire pit off of there. I broke that. That should be, hang on. That's workbench. So I need that to be fire pit. And this one, there you go. This one, we'll take fire pit off of this. Okay. So with that there, we want it to show the building base UI for the workbench when we interact with the workbench object. So go back to the workbench. What interact with, we're going to do create widget. And we're going to create the build menu workbench and add to our viewport. Compile, save. The thing that's different though is our build menu UI. So this thing is not a container. So this is like the whole screen, which you probably don't want. So if you want it to be in a similar setup as previously, you do have to wrap this with something else, ideally a canvas panel or something. I'm going to put in a border, actually, I think might be, no, I'll do a canvas panel. So it doesn't really matter too much, depends on what you want this to be like. So wrap with canvas panel. And we'll just resize that to where we want it to be. I'll put it there. Also to do that, we do need to go back to the workbench because I forgot that we need to go to our mesh and enable it to be interactive by changing the collision preset. So go to custom and block the interactive there. Okay, now we're probably going to need more wood, so I'll put another tree in. And push play. And let's get some wood. Like that. And go to my build menu, build my workbench, place the workbench, and I can see I can use the workbench. So push E, and there's my fire pit. So what I need to do now is just give it the controls to manipulate that menu. So if I go back to my build menu workbench, graph, on the construct here, we're going to get the player controller, set show mouse cursor to true, and we're going to change the input mode, set input mode to UI. And when we destruct this, we're going to basically do the opposite. So we put in hide mouse cursor by turning it off, and we set the input mode back to game. Game only. And we just need to make this thing close when we want it to close. In which case, I'm just going to go into override functions and add a key down. And say when this receives the key down event here, we're going to get the key for it and see if that is equal to the I key again to be able to close it and reopen it. If that's the case, then I'm going to do remove from parent. And don't forget to put in handled at the end here for the reply. And I think that's it. So let's go ahead and test that out again. Get ourselves more wood. Go to build, workbench, place the workbench, use the workbench, fire pit. And now I can place the fire pit. Okay. So we can now use this to add more items to our database of build selections. But one thing we definitely need to do though is make it so it takes away the resources. So we're going to do that in the next part. So join us over there for that. So there you go. We've now fixed the collision, and we've now fixed the ability to interact with objects that we can place into our scene, as well as allowing us to have an advanced build menu to add more complexity and layers to our gameplay. So in the next episode, we're going to make these objects actually consume the resources that they are costing to actually build. So jump over to that next episode right now over on patreon.com/Ryan Laley. We can find that video plus many others before anyone else from just $1 a month. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you next time. Bye everyone.